Hello, Lilydale Radio. I'm Tiffany Hopkins, and this is Beyond. So, tonight I am live, and it's just me. I'm doing an episode where I'm going to monologue for 20 to 30 minutes about one of my favorite mediumship topics. I do one of these every month, and I have so much to share. um, because I finished the book and I really want to share at least, what I can verbally through this show before the book comes out so people have an understanding of what the book is about and, are excited about it. So there's a lot, and I was originally going to go in order of like chapter by chapter because there's a like logical order, of course, to it. But I'm actually just kind of going with what is coming up in my life. And what I want to talk about tonight is the foundational, like the very basic skills that make up mediumship. And I want to talk about this because A, there's not a single answer. And B, I don't think it's what we usually think is important. So, I want you to take a moment and think about what kind of skills you imagine you need to be a medium, and what you really feel like you have to be good at in order to be a medium. And I'm gonna guess most of us initially, the first thought we have is we need to be psychic. That's sort of like a baseline consideration, I think. And then after that, that's kind of it, right? Like, I know when I started this, I kind of figured that that was what I needed to learn. I needed to learn psychic communication, and the rest was just part of that. And what I've realized is that that's actually just one tiny part of mediumship, and it's not even necessarily the most important part or something we need to focus on. And that might be surprising. So I want to break that down a little bit. And I want to start with what mediumship is: communication, right? So I want to start with thinking about what makes communication possible. And we can all think of this for ourselves, and what makes communication possible for me, for example, is going to be different than what makes communication possible for someone else. And we all kind of have different skills. And then what else is interesting to think about is what actually makes communication good for me or great for me, and what makes communication hard for me, and sort of breaking down what communication means for me and how I do it. And the reason this is so important is because we're talking about one type of communication, and in my opinion, a difficult form of communication. And so if our regular communication skills are there, we're going to start with those. And then the places we have regular communication challenges are probably where we're going to need to beef up our skills. And then, the things that we're naturally good at with communication will probably already have a leg up with. And understanding that in the form of just communication means we have a better understanding of what we're working with and what we need to work on. And it gives us skills and things to practice and explore when we don't either have the space or time or other people we need to practice mediumship. And so, these communication skills, and you can even break it down. Like I encourage you to write it down. I actually, of course, have a little spreadsheet and make a little pie chart of everything I think goes into mediumship. And that first one is communication skills, and then breaking that one down into, talking, what makes talking fun or not fun for me, what makes it easier or harder. There's certain languages I speak. There's types of conversations I like, just really getting into the nitty-gritty of my communication style and my communication skills. And so that is something I encourage people to spend time with and explore, because one thing that I think is sort of interesting is that I often feel that people who struggle with communication actually end up being maybe naturally more inclined towards mediumship or psychic skills, because if you're lacking the regular, normal ways of communicating through talking and speech and being able to build rapport with people, you may have to rely on other things that are actually either seem like or are the basis for psychic communication. So this can be following body language and minute movements in the face and intonation. And when you get really good at all of these sort of extra communication skills that aren't our normal communication skills, they are actually building a foundation for psychic communication, because we are able to kind of go the extra, and hear more than just words. And everybody's capable of reading body language. We all do it all the time and don't even know it. But some people are naturally better at it, whether they had to be for whatever reason. Maybe there's physical reasons. There could be like experiences or the people they were around as young children that made it really important to be able to kind of pick up on extra skills, extra communication skills. And those can often be these sort of foundations for psychic communication or other nonverbal communication, right? And kind of building on that, I think something that's really important for mediumship that we don't always talk about is pattern recognition. And this kind of goes into, or it starts with being able to recognize intonation and body movements. And that's what's going to happen with two humans who are living. But we also want that sort of, you know, ability to focus on really small details that we will use when we're speaking with the dead or other low sensory input contacts. So whether, as you know, I should just say again, I am always using the term mediumship to refer to communication with spirit loved ones, but I extend that definition to include any one or thing that you might want to communicate, which doesn't have all of the regular, normal, living human kind of abilities. So for me, the really big ones that I communicate using mediumship are my animals, my body, the nature around me, the nature in space, so planets and things out there in space, elements, that kind of thing. But you could use it for whatever you want. And of course, this includes speaking with the dead. So know that if you're into other kinds of communication, animal communication, whatever you might be into, that's cool. And these skills apply there too. So getting into pattern recognition, I actually think one of the reasons mediumship really works well for me is this. I have really good pattern recognition. And that is a just classic human skill. We all have it. How much we've honed it varies. And it really helps us to be able to learn, and particularly in resource deficient environments, which I would consider mediumship by definition. We don't have a physical body we're communicating with in a lot of cases. And so we are missing a lot of the normal information that we're going to be using to communicate. And so having ability to kind of do pattern recognition really helps. And along with that, I'm going to kind of keep going. And something sort of related to that is I actually think one of the really important aspects of my mediumship skills is based on a strong connection between the two sides of my brain. So this is something I personally use. This isn't something I'm saying that everybody needs to use or is important, like is critical, or you can't do mediumship without it. But I think it's really helped me because I can basically kind of move between the two sides of the brain to see the big picture and to see little details and kind of go back and forth. And for me, that's how one of the main ways that I actually do mediumship. And the way I strengthen that, so I'm left-handed, but most of the sports I've played in my life and a lot of the things I've done throughout my life has been with my right hand. And so I've become somewhat ambidextrous. And I think this has helped me kind of build this strong connection and be able to use both sides of my brain. And so this is something that's kind of might be a little more unique to me. I like to think of other examples of stuff like this, of things, whatever it is you in particular are good at or have as a unique skill or something you've cultivated in your life. That's where you start to put these things on your list of what you use for mediumship, so that you start to understand how you're working and what you can use as you're going in and doing your mediumship communications. And another example that's totally different from the example I gave for myself is I once took a class with a medium who's really well known for being able to get names. And everybody who takes a class with him is like, how do you do it? I have to know. How do you get names? Because most people don't really get names. And he was like, well, most people aren't good at names ever, right? Like, how many of us go around the world being like, oh, I forgot your name. I'm sorry. I'm so bad with names. And if we're really bad with names in the regular world, we're probably not going to be great at names when we have less information, right? And we're in the spirit realm or wherever it is we're communicating. And this medium actually said when he was a kid, he used to read baby name books. So we're talking nerd level into names, this person is. And so, it makes sense that he's amazing at names with mediumship. And so I want you to think about where are you just like, where do you nerd out? Whatever it is, you might think it is completely unrelated. Like my example of playing sports right-handed as a left-handed person, the fact that I think that is one of my main powers in mediumship might be surprising, right? But hey, we get what we get and we want to make the best of it, right? So I encourage you to think like, what weird skill do you have? What are you capable of that people are like, huh? How do you do that? How did you know how to do that? So think about that and then see if you can notice it in your mediumship or bring it into your mediumship as you're practicing and learning. And then so I just going down my own list of, again, these are my basic skills to cultivate. And I want to get into kind of like drawing on what I just talked about is we all have a breadth of life experiences to draw on, and they are all unique. And every single one of us has this whole lifetime of memories and experiences that have shaped us and that sit in our mind for our communicators, our contacts to bring to mind, that for us to share with sitters or with whoever we're bringing messages for. Everything we have in that arsenal of experiences helps create what it is we have to work with when we are communicating, especially because with resource deficient communication or mediumship, we're not always working with words. A lot of times we're working with sensations or even memories. A lot of experiences I hear from other mediums and that I have on my own as well is the experience of my contact or a spirit bringing a memory to mind or a feeling that reminds me of a place or a time or a person. And everything I have in there is a way for me to communicate without words, without hearing sounds and talking out loud. And we all have this arsenal. And sometimes this is one of the reasons I think that mediumship is something that becomes easier or we become more capable and like comfortable with mediumship as we get older because we just have more to work with. And that kind of applies to all the skills we're talking about here. Um, and kind of along those lines, one of the big things I credit to being able to do mediumship, this is very obvious, but I can't not say it, but I have an extensive time and amount of exposure to mediumship and a lot of study and learning about mediumship. And the more you kind of pack your brain with memories and experiences with something, the more you can understand it and work with it and expand it expand it in your life. And so I always recommend people spend time watching other mediums, reading about mediums, watching TV shows about mediums, even if it's totally fictional. And reading history about how mediumship lived in other times and places. I mean, just the more you can expand your mind and understand in like ways that this could exist. And that's why I think fiction is actually really important, especially not scary fiction. I mean, I'm not opposed to horror or genres that a lot of stuff that deals with mediumship is in the horror genre, which is not my favorite. I really prefer more like fantasy or sci-fi, and because it helps me expand like my own potential and my own imagination for what's possible. And I think that's really important as another skill to kind of hone to become a medium. So I want to get into some of the even less or more abstract things. So, um, one is just being, so I really believe another one of the reasons that I took to mediumship very quickly was because I have what one of my employers once called a comfort with ambiguity. And this is a skill that is honed in my industry. I do innovation consulting, I do research and design work. And when you are trying to figure out the future, which is what innovation is, um, you don't have a lot of information. I work a lot in resource deficient environments. So, yes, you see a pattern here. And one of the things, one of my past employers, it's called IDEO is the company. Um, they always try to have their employees hone the skill comfort with ambiguity, because the more you can get comfortable with not having a black and white answer, not having a solid, we know this is true, the better you're going to be able to navigate situations where you don't have all the information you need, and you will never have all the information you need, right? This is the case with innovation. This is absolutely the case with mediumship. You cannot have 100% information and 100% yes, we are fully sure what's going on, because we're talking about spirits, right? They are not in our physical dimension. And so as much as we connect with them, we are always still not there in the same like realm as they are. And so if you can get comfortable with that, with not knowing, with not being sure, with having the confidence to just say what you're experiencing, even if maybe you're not 100% there or you don't have confirmation. Those are all really important aspects of doing mediumship, especially with other people. And so, if you want to start to cultivate your comfort with ambiguity, I encourage you to work with experiencing things that and seeing the world as existing on a spectrum and not necessarily fitting into boxes, and start to notice how everything is a little bit more complicated than maybe language is going to show it. what's coming to my mind is 50 Shades of Grey, and I have to say that name is a great, um, way of articulating this, is like it nothing is black and white, and if you start to practice seeing the world in grayscale instead of you could do a rainbow, it doesn't have to be grayscale, but not just, that everything is fixed, and that everything fits in a little box, then it's gonna help you kind of be more comfortable with the fact that mediumship is not an exact science and that you just I personally don't think we're ever gonna know everything about how it works, and, maybe we do it anyways. So yeah, cultivating your capacity for not knowing and maybe, you know, living between the lines, I think is an important part for being a medium. I mean, look, the name is medium, means in between. So, it's definitely a place that I think actually naturally a lot of people who are comfortable in the in between, comfortable in sort of liminal spaces or forced to be in liminal spaces, we end up doing things like mediumship and art and other kind of not, or I should say more ambiguous activities that don't have yes or no, right or wrong. That doesn't mean you don't like more concrete things. For example, I love math, but my favorite math is um, kind of abstract. So I don't know if that's a good example to talk about. Anyways, that is comfort with ambiguity, another one of my basic skills for mediumship. Then I want to get to just plain old curiosity. I think curiosity, I mean, I should say curiosity is one of my core life values. It is something I've identified as one of the most important things in the world to me, in existence. So, of course, it's going to be on here. It's another one of those. I mean, none of these, like I said, I don't think any of these are required. Nobody has to have the same list. Nobody will have this same list. It's a weird list. But I do think having a sense of curiosity goes hand in hand with wanting to even do mediumship or connect with spirits, and all this kind of stuff that is ambiguous. And I do think having a natural inclination to any honed inclination, right? A lot of these things are natural, but a lot of them are I have cultivated them. I'm suggesting you cultivate too your curiosity. And just that simple way of kind of approaching everything of with oh, tell me more. And why is that? And what's happening here? And it really actually goes hand in hand with the comfort with ambiguity because if we always know what a thing is or we think we know, then we don't have a lot of curiosity left. And that actually, if you've ever had a reading with somebody who interpreted everything they experienced and told you exactly what everything was, you may have experienced something that's like, well, there was no room for curiosity for my own interpretation. And I think one of the things that really helps make a good reading, not just even makes mediumship possible, but being a good reader as well, is curiosity. And that actually brings up something I was going to talk about at the end, but I feel like we got here a little early. And so I'm just going to say this now is in addition, I'm talking about mediumship skills. And I do want to articulate that doing readings for people, especially professional readings, is an entirely different additional set of skills. So these mediumship skills where I'm talking about are mostly in order to create connection and communicate with spirit. There's a whole nother set of skills to be a good medium for other people. And then there's another big set. If you want to be a professional medium, you have to be able to like run a business and all that stuff. And this is definitely not in that realm. We're really focusing on the skills of mediumship and the communication process. And one skill that kind of overlaps and does both mediumship and giving a good reading is empathy. Empathy is so important. We could also say these are all just really great life skills, at least in my book. Empathy is being able to relate to another person and having compassion and having you know, a way of connecting that allows you to understand somebody else is having a different, could be having a different experience than you are, and treating others with that kind of care that requires. And I think what there's a lot that goes into that around not assuming you know what's going on with another person, and the same thing with spirit. Um, we're all trying to get our messages across, and we have to understand that we don't always know how those are going to be received, and we can't control how they're going to be received. And we have to trust the spirit. We have to trust our sitters and have faith that they're going to take what they need and be able to communicate back to us what it is they need when they need it. And that's all this like big constellation of empathy skills that they're just important part of communication. And that's one that probably could just sit under communication skills, but I pulled out again because I love it and I think it's really important. The next I want to talk about is listening to my body. And this is one of the parts of mediumship that I have been most surprised about, probably. This is not my natural skill. This is one I completely had to build, and mostly built by practicing healing. And in particular, practicing healing in a way where I'm spending a lot of time focusing on the minute sensations going on in my body. And as I've developed that capacity, I've realized how much information I get when I'm doing mediumship through my body. And this is one that absolutely I can vouch for it being a buildable skill that anybody can do. Learning, we might want to call it embodiment, interoception. It's a sense essentially that the body has the capacity to feel on the inside what is happening to it, and it just takes time and trust in the body. One of the For those who are naturally embodied and naturally listen to their body, this is going to sound insane, but for people like me who aren't naturally connected to their body, you might understand where I'm coming from here. One of the biggest ways I learned this was actually making changes in my life to go to the bathroom, drink water, eat food when my body said it needed those things, and not when my calendar or my environment said so. So one of the biggest learnings for me in my 30s was that I need to eat 4 meals a day. And it was like mind blowing to me that I didn't figure this out earlier. But I was like, I eat breakfast at a certain time, I eat lunch when it's lunchtime, and then I eat dinner at dinner time. And that was how I lived. And I finally listened to my body and found that if I eat 4 meals, I actually feel a lot better, have a lot more stable of a mood, and I'm able to enjoy my day a lot more. And so little things like that, and big one, getting up and going to the bathroom when I actually have to go and not when it's a commercial break or a meeting break or whatever it is. So again, those are baby steps, but these are things we learn in school to ignore. And those kinds of things are actually the kind of gateway to being able to trust the body, and the body learning to trust the rest of us, the mind, in order to communicate better. So I've got 3 left, and these are probably the hardest to talk about. One is I want to bring up, and that is the filtering that happens subconsciously or unconsciously from bias and defense mechanisms. I could spend a whole episode on this, and I kind of feel like I should someday. Have to bring a guest on, somebody who's like a psychologist or otherwise better prepared to talk about this. But our brain changes our experience because we have different biases and defense mechanisms that have been developed over the course of our lives that have kept us alive and helped us achieve everything we've achieved, that also come into play in any communication we have, but especially when we're doing mediumship. And I bring this up because it is so important to get to know biases, and I provide some lists in the book and of both, and some tools on how to work with them. Um, but for me, this is actually the place I spend the most time working on, and I think it's my frontier because for example, my favorite example of this is that I do not like information that comes in and seems just unreliable or um, weird or conflicting with my own opinions, and anything that comes in that is going to kind of trigger something in ourselves is in terms of what we like or don't like or think is right or wrong. um, we have to learn to acknowledge how our own systems are putting these values or um, kind of filters on information. And until we notice them, we can't even tell it's happening. And one fun, well, actually, it's not that fun, but one simple way to do this is to learn about unconscious bias. And Harvard has an unconscious bias test you can take. I took it like 10 years ago the first time and was pretty appalled to learn some of my own unconscious biases against women, for example, which was like mind blowing that I could have these like internalized biases that I didn't know about. And I just encourage you to try that out. It's wild. I think learning our own biases, I don't know how you say that, and defense mechanisms is a lifelong process for me personally. And we all have the capacity to do that. And we all have them. And, you know, so yeah, I'm not going to spend a ton of time on that, but I do think it's an important skill to cultivate, is recognizing how we're kind of our operating systems in there in that sense. And now we get to the last two, which are the best. The first is space. Space for something else to come in, right? That is something I personally cultivate through mindfulness, through meditation, through exercise, through rest, sleep, anything I can do to kind of, yeah, create a little space in my being. And I think that is absolutely critical for us to do mediumship, because if there's no space in us, then there's nowhere for information to come in and no way for spirit to contact us. So that is another, we all have a different level of existing space. Our own experiences and having space within ourselves changes moment by moment, day by day, year by year. But it's something we can work on and make changes to if we need. And now we get to the last one. And it on my own list, it's just 5 question marks, right? Great one, right? I have this for 2 reasons. One is for myself, my list, I've changed it like in the last week. I'm always adding things to this list. And also, so there's a question mark category for me in my own experience and for each of you. And then there's a question mark category in like I don't know. I said this already. I'm pretty sure we're never gonna know what exactly is happening, at least not in my lifetime. Um, and, that's where that comfort with ambiguity comes in. We aren't gonna figure it all out. It isn't a mathematical equation that we can compute at this point. And having a little room for some mystery is, like, kinda the point and very beautiful and where I'm gonna end. So thank you for listening. I hope, you enjoyed this. I hope you get to spend some time thinking about what skills you have, what skills you want, what skills you love, what makes, things really enjoyable for you, and how you can bring more of that into your mediumship. And I will, have another episode in 2 weeks. In the meantime, you can find me on Instagram at Normalize Talking to the Dead. You can come onto our website, normalizetalkingtothedead.com. I'm starting to put all sorts of resources for the book on there, and you can, of course, pre-order the book Beyond a Living Person's Guide to the Dead. Pre-orders are super helpful in getting some excitement and having some support for the book before it comes out. So I would love if you could do that, or if you're interested. And thanks again for your time. Have a great evening, morning, day, week, month, year, lifetime. Talk to you soon.